First of all, our company, Chapman Employment Relations, we provide employment law and human resources advice exclusively to employers. So we don't represent employees, so there's no conflict of interest there for us. So that's anything to do with the employment relationship, from assisting companies to employ somebody. We're not a recruitment agency though, so we don't have a bank of applicants sitting waiting there, but we will help people through the process to try and make good recruitment decisions, right through to the other end of the employment relationship, which is unfortunately where we spend most of our time with our clients, is when things haven't gone quite so well and you may wish your employee to choose a different career path, and we may assist them in that decision-making process, so it's their decision that they no longer work with you. We do obviously all the bits in between as well, so we provide for our clients free 5-10 minute advisory calls. So that's when people say, the usual one around public holidays is, just had a public holiday, don't know what I'm supposed to be paying my employee, they didn't work, these are the scenarios, and those are the types of everyday questions that we get, and we're more than happy to answer for people. We much prefer that our clients take advantage of that free advisory call, even if it's just to use this as a sounding board, to say, hey Kay, I'm just done my interviews and I think we've got this cracking guy, but here's a couple of things that they said in the interview, what do you think? And I'll go, okay, I know you think he's a cracking guy, but your gut has just told you something. I just want you to think a little bit more deeply into why it is that you think that maybe not, and I'll talk you through that. And it's far better that you spend 10 minutes, I won't charge you for that, to confirm whether that's a good decision or maybe you should rethink it, rather than you spend thousands of dollars with me later on down the track when you're trying to exit this employee. Yeah. So I make sure that I network a lot. And meet lots of people, and it's the same for you. If you're, for whatever industry that you're in, if you're networking within your industry, you will come across people all the time. If you happen to be in retail and you always go to, sorry, I was going to say Beetlejuice, where'd you go? Yeah, jewellery, and I really actually happen to like somebody who works there. Beware of me, because
we've had that happen.
Poach people. If you've seen them work in retail and actually the service they give you is second to none, that's the type of person you want in your business, because they don't know that they're being judged. At an interview, I know that I have to be on my best behaviour. Like you say, I will answer all of the questions in the way that you expect me to answer them, because I've schooled myself up and I've Googled it. But if I can observe you behaving the way I want you to when you don't know that you're being observed, that's the employee that I want. I will still put the advert out there, right? I will still advertise, never expecting to appoint anybody that actually responds to the ad, except for the one person that I've targeted. So it's their choice. They've applied. I've taken for several coffees over the last 2 years. But yeah, that's how I primarily recruit. I would always say trust your gut, but then what you need to do is work out why it is that your gut has said what it has said. So when I'm doing an interview, for argument's sake, and we do, as much as I've poo-pooed interviews, we do them. They're very, very structured interviews to make sure that I am testing the criteria that I want in that person. But as opposed to writing down very rough notes, I will be writing as fast as I can, or I'll have somebody in that interview who is writing verbatim as much as they can. Because when you read it back, and it might be something as subtle as your gut saying to you, or when I ask them about the teamwork question and what they did in that team, as opposed to talking about the things that they did, they kept using the word we, which on the face of it you think, oh yeah, it's teamwork, so it should be about we. But if you've asked the question about what did you do, when somebody's talking about we did X, Y, and Z, they tend to not be talking about what they did. They're portraying what somebody else in the group or the whole group did. And your gut will be telling you, that answer wasn't quite right, but they seem to be saying the same things, but I don't understand why. If you've got somebody taking notes that when they're answering sort of with we, when it should be I and vice versa, you can look back at it and go, that's why it was that my gut is not telling me, or is telling me that this isn't the right person. And from a Privacy Act perspective, if you're within a conversation, you can tape it without the other person knowing, all right? From an employment relationship perspective, I wouldn't do it. That doesn't set you up for a really good relationship going forward. If somebody's saying, even if you ask them, oh, we're going to tape you, if I was a candidate, I'd be going, do I really want to work for them? They're taping me already. I haven't even started working for them. So it's more about that impression that you give. The other thing I'd say is when you're doing the interview, don't ever just do it by yourself. Always have somebody with you. If possible, as long as it doesn't become too overpowering for the applicant, is to have 3. And the reason I have 3, one just takes notes, all right? As fast as they possibly can write, they're taking notes. The other 2 are asking questions. And I would always structure it as that you're asking questions in batches. So don't go, I'm asking one, then you're asking one, then I'm asking one. Because what we do as humans is I am so busy trying to think what my next question is, I forget to listen to the answer that you're giving me. All right? So it's about making sure that, if you're the person asking the question, the other person's the actual one listening. So what are they really saying? And they might then ask supplementary questions, because it's just appropriate in terms of the answer that they gave. You've probably all heard that when you meet somebody for the first time, you've made a decision about them in the first 20 to 30 seconds. Exactly the same at interviews. And because as human beings we like to be right, I'm particularly one of those people, of course I'm right, ask my husband, all right, is we will spend the rest of the interview justifying our initial impression. So that's how we get to, oh, well, I really like the look of them and they said they really liked rugby, and I like rugby, so they must be a good person. And so I will ask questions and I will alter my questions ever so subtly to get the answers so I can prove myself right. And so that's why it's important that you have more than one person there to actually counter that. There's a category of person that is the absolute best at interviews, and they are psychopaths. Because they know exactly how to answer the questions. They know what it is that you want to hear. They are master manipulators, and they are the worst person in the world to have within your organisation. Okay? But they are brilliant at interviews, and that's why it's so important that part of your recruitment process is not just an interview. All right? An interview will only form part of the whole picture. So let's start at the beginning of the process. So we started on about attracting good candidates. All right? So how many people have put our job on Seek or Trade Me? So what number of applicants did you get back? 30 to 40 applicants? 20 applicants. The worst I heard in the last couple of weeks, 14,000. Oh. And it's like, oh my God, really? I think they needed to rewrite their ad for that one. So part of the recruitment process that I do, the interview is such a small part of that. So the first, once I've moved beyond the application form and the CV, and we'll talk about that in a moment, because that's a large part. The very next test for them is when they walk into the office and how they speak to reception. And whole part of my selection process, and we recruit on behalf of some of our clients, is how did they treat them? How did they treat them on the phone? How did they, and if they are rude and obnoxious or offhand with reception, I don't want them in my business. Because if they do that at an interview, then they're going to keep doing that. That's just you've just got a snapshot of the real person, because what they're not going to be like that to you at the interview, because they know that you're the one judging them. So it starts right from the beginning. So somebody asked about going to a cafe. So the team takes them to the cafe. I don't go along. All right? So, and it is amazing how much more information when the candidate thinks they're having a chat with the team, that the team can get out of them, that I never got out when I was doing the interview. Because suddenly they're relaxed, they think it's just a chat with everybody else, it's a, a bit more of a social event. They all go out to coffee on the company. Then interviewee goes away, and then we all go into a room and have a chat. And it's amazing the number of times the team will go, "No way." And you go, "Okay." And if your team says no way, it's no way. Because if you invite them into that recruitment process and then ignore everything they say, you will lose the faith of your team. I can remember interviewing somebody for a retail position. So, you've got to be relatively clean-mouthed for that. All through the interview, she could not swear. And it's like, well, if you can't do that in an interview, how on earth are you going to do that in front of customers? That you can't discriminate on the basis of a number of things in the Human Rights Act. So the key ones in terms of recruitment that you're going to come across are things like, age, race, religion, political persuasions, disability. So there are a number. Most of them are common sense. When you think about them, you go, yep, no, that's not a good idea to ask about sex. I didn't say that. Gender. What are your childcare provisions? Well, did you ask all the guys that? So if you wouldn't ask that question to every single candidate, because it's not relevant, the chances are you shouldn't ask it of that singular candidate. Right, so, okay, disability, all right? You can ask the question, are there any health issues that may prevent you from carrying out the responsibilities of this position? All right, and then they can answer that question. So yep, you can ask about criminal histories, and again, it's not that you're going to say no necessarily. For some criminal records, you may well say no. If you work in a bank and it's about a dishonesty charge, then chances are you want to say no. But it's about giving you the opportunity to ask the question, so that when they've ticked yes, it's like, well, okay, tell me about that. Okay, and taking it a step further, and you may want to take it a step further with everybody, and certainly with kindergartens you have to, is that you do a criminal history check. You can ask about sick days. You can ask about employment disputes. Right? So you can ask somebody, have you taken a personal grievance or had a dispute with an employer previously? And then that's all part of your whole recruitment selection process, is information which is publicly available to use that, like your LinkedIn, Google the person's name. Facebook. You do have to be careful in terms of privacy, so you can't, for the sole purpose of your recruitment process, try to friend somebody on Facebook just so you can see what they've been up to, all right? If it's essential that they have a degree in education, then you need to check that that piece of paper they showed you is actually real, because we all remember the Nelson psychiatrist that wasn't a psychiatrist and wasn't actually even female. And as employers, you have rights. Both parties enter into this employment agreement on agreed terms. And so if one of those parties wants to change those terms, you can't unilaterally do that. She has no right to come to you and say, I can only do 10 now. Yeah. People lie the most, we call them fabrications, but lie the most about dates, job titles, their education and their skills. So all the important stuff. Right, they usually get their name right. All right, reference checking. It's about your reference checking is like you do your interview. Okay, so your interview will set you up. And an interview is around, for me, it's what we call behavioural questions. So it's not giving a hypothetical, what would you do if a customer came up to you and complained? Most people have Googled that and know exactly what the answer is. So a behavioural question is what you're trying to find out, is what they've done in the past, because past behaviour is the best predictor of future behaviour. So I would say, so can you give me a time when a customer came up to you and complained, and what did you do about it? You've worked out what it is, what are those criteria that you're trying to measure? Because if you don't know what you're measuring against, right, and you measure against criteria, don't measure candidate against candidate, because then what you're going to get is the best of possibly a bad bunch, as opposed to the candidate that you need to fulfill that role. So if you've been really clear, these are the criteria, this is what I need this person to do, these are the skills, these are the values they need to have, And these are the things that are absolutely essential, non-negotiable. If they get across on here, not going there. Whereas these are the bits that, you know, I'm a little bit more flexible on. And stick to your criteria. So all your questions should relate to those criteria. So you're testing those criteria all the way along, yeah? Through behavioural questioning. And then when you get to the reference and doing referee checks, a couple of things on referee checks. One is that the Privacy Act requires the applicant to have given you permission to seek a reference from particular people, all right? Then you will get the, oh yeah, that's okay, because they know that they're going to get a good reference, or the person that knows that they're not is highly unlikely to be prepared to go, yep, we'll follow that process if they think that they might not get the job because of that particular reference. But I would be, rather than looking at who they've said they are their referees, I'd be looking at the CV and or the application form and saying, who do I want to speak to? Who are the managers that are most relevant to this position and the criteria that I've got? Then I'd be going to the applicant and saying, hey, can I contact this person? If not, why not? The number one question I will always ask a referee is, would you re-employ? With psychometric testing, I believe that they do have a place in some recruitment processes. In order for them to be effective, you have to know what it is that you are looking for. And so let's say you do a psychometric test that says that this person likes to work alone, okay? Do you know what? If it's an IT position that's on a help desk, that's not going to suit you. But if it's an IT developer that has no client interface whatsoever and you just need them to program, that is exactly what you want. So you need to have looked at the psychometric test first before anybody's filled it in and go, well, actually, we need somebody to be on that part of the spectrum, rather than looking at it without that pre-thought and going, oh God, they're not a team player. We can't have them, because you might not want them to be a team player. Actually, that room out the back without windows is where they're going to have to sit. And you don't want a team player in that room, because they'll keep coming out wanting a team to play with, all right? So make sure you know what it is before you enter into that psychometric test. So there are a lot of tests online that you can target at what it is that you need. You've got to be very, very mindful of them. There was a case a couple of years back, and it was a Nelson case, whereby it was a cafe, brought the person in to serve customers for a day to test the person, didn't pay them, it was part of the recruitment process. Subsequently, the person challenged that work trial was actually an employment relationship, and the court that went from the Employment Relations Authority and was challenged in the court, actually ruled that work trial, because there were a number of factors to it, but one of the key factors was that the employer gained something from that person doing that work trial, and therefore it was work, and therefore the person was an employee, should have got paid, and therefore was terminated unjustifiably. So when you're making a job offer, be very, very careful in terms of your excitement and making that offer. So rather than ring out the person and saying, hey, congratulations, that's it, you've got the job, and you hear dead silence on the end, and you think, oh, I wanted them to be really excited, and now they're not, and now I'm really questioning whether I want to. So a job offer is, please make it subject to. All right, so you see, yes, hey, look, we'd really like to offer you the position, subject to a couple of things. One of those is that we agree terms and conditions in the employment agreement. So subject to agreeing terms and conditions, might be subject to a police check, it might be subject to reference checks. So it gives you, by having a subject to, it gives you an out. But because your employment agreement, New Zealand legislation is that you're required to provide an employment agreement in writing before the person starts, and if you want a 90-day trial period, you have to have it in writing before and signed and returned before the person starts. Not the day that they start, before the person starts, all right? So in which case you put all of that in writing and say, hey, you know, here's the terms and conditions, has to be signed and returned to us by X date.